Well, good morning and welcome once again. Get me microphone in roughly the right place. It's Elevenses with Kevin Williams here of Survival Skills Rider Training, and for the next 30 odd minutes I'm going to take you through some topical news, some possibly controversial views, and hopefully give you some help on riding too with my item on filtering. I'm just trying to get the laptop set up here because it's threatening to fall off. I can see what the problem is. It's sitting on the charging cable. Hang on a minute. Let me just reorganize that and move it so it's not all going to fall over. Right, sorry about that. Nothing like a bit of technical problem first thing in the morning. Okay. It's show number 296. It's Wednesday, the 14th of December, and it is a particularly fine and bright morning here in northwest London, and it's also extremely cold. You probably noticed that it snowed in the London area, and there was actually traffic chaos on Sunday night on the M25 in Hertfordshire, I'm told. So if you are out there on the bike later, and wrap up warm and be careful. Right, Kevin and Christine have looked in. Good morning to you both. Right, so what have we got for you in the news today? Well, we'll be starting off with a very quick look at the DVSA and how they may launch a motorcycle licensing review. Now, I've got more on that towards the end of the show, actually. I'll use that as an extra discussion point. A parliamentary group has won a road safety award for their work on e-step scooters. E-scooter sounds are also going on test this month. Indian has recalled almost 8,000 motorcycles over a fuel pump fault. A price update has been made, and we now know how much Suzuki's incoming GSX 8S will cost in the UK. Something that was teased at the Milan Motorcycle Show is that Moto Guzzi may be bringing back a new version of the Stelvio adventure bike. That was always one of my favourite looking bikes, even if it was a little bit out of my price range, a bit too big for what I wanted, but hey ho. Waze are also apparently introducing an update, and this will introduce vehicle profiles. At least that's the belief. Yamaha's Y-Connect system will enhance your life, according to the blurb on the Yamaha website. We'll have a quick look at what that is and whether you can actually get it for your motorcycle. And then finally, we'll finish off with the accident top 10. We're up to number 2, which will be filtering follies. So all that's in the show in just the next few minutes. Don't forget, if you do have a comment, a question, anything you want to ask, do fire away. I'll try to get back to you as the show goes on. If I can't do it during the show, I'll definitely get back to you at the end of the show. Right, so on with the news then. Well, MAG has reported the very welcome news that a possible outcome from the recent formation of the DVSA's new motorcycle strategy group could be a motorcycle licensing review in the not too distant future. Now, I will immediately point out that as we talk at the moment, this is all still speculative. There is nothing nailed down. There are vague promises from government, and the Motorcycle Action Group have said that they're very pleased to hear those promises, but they are still promises. Anyway, MAG has confirmed that the Roads Minister, Richard Holden MP, has responded to recommendations that MAG put forward in a recent report that asks for further research into CBT numbers. The report from the Riders' Rights Group, which actually I was going to talk about today, but things have moved on with the response rather quicker than I expected. They also recommended a review of the licensing system to get more CBT riders converted to fully qualified riders. MAG believes that a simplified system should increase the number of riders on the road, whilst also improving rider safety. Now, I will come back to this story at the end, so do stay tuned. Now, second story of the day, the Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety, known as PACTS, has been International Road Safety Award for their research into the use and safety of private e-scooters in the UK. Now, I'm sure you are very well aware that authorised rental schemes have been operating across England since July 2020, but the overwhelming growth in the use of these e-step scooters has been in private hands, and therefore they are currently illegal to use. Now, the PACTS study was launched in August 2021 to gather qualitative and quantitative information on the use of the illegal e-step scooters. So that's rather different from the government scheme, which, as far as I understand it, is restricting itself entirely to the rental schemes. Now, the data from this research report, which was funded by the Road Safety Trust, suggests that more than 1.3 million of the vehicles have been imported into the UK since 2019. Working with a team of project partners who included the NHS, police, legal professionals, head injury charities, and representatives from road safety organisations, PACTS also logged accounts of casualties from the internet and social media, and they have been publishing those figures monthly on their website. Now, PACTS have made recommendations for safety regulations, which include construction and use, as I understand it, which would presumably cover areas like brakes, wheels and tyres, and lights. They've also talked about mandatory helmet use and a top speed of just 12.5 miles per hour. Now, PACTS have called on the UK government to, 1, take immediate action to address dangerous and illegal private e-scooter use, 2, undertake a thorough public consultation before making any decision on the legalisation of e-scooters, and 3, to publish the information on the government trials and undertake further research. David Davies, who is the PACTS executive director, said the government has stated that it intends to legalise private e-scooters for use on public roads in the UK. The PACT's recommendations for regulations should be the starting point on which safe regulation is built. Now, one conclusion of the report is interesting. It says the data collected shows that in vital respects, e-scooters are different from pedal cycles and should be assessed and regulated based on their own attributes. Well, personally, I would say that since e-step scooters share the same riding environment as cycles and e-cycles, I would say that there is a case for looking at harmonizing rules rather than actually setting them all differently, particularly when it comes to things like speed and helmet wearing. Anyway, that's something I will be returning to in the next show, as I've just got too much to talk about today. Now, staying with the step scooter theme, the micro mobility company DOT will be testing a universal e-scooter sound to see if it reduces the number of crashes with pedestrians. Now, in a laboratory test, a sample of people, including some who are blind or partially sighted, will wear a virtual reality headset to immerse them into simulations involving scooters emitting 3 distinctly different sounds. They will be asked to identify when they're first aware of the e-scooter, and they will be asked to provide feedback on the suitability of the sounds. Now, the sounds themselves have been developed by researchers at the University of Salford. That is something I've reported on previously. And the test will take place in London in a laboratory in partnership with the Royal National Institute of Blind People, the RNIB. And they are actually going to be carried out in other cities too. They'll be repeated in Italy, Sweden and Spain, other laboratories I should say, before trials go ahead on public roads. Now, the development of an industry standard e-scooter sound, which can be detected by those who need it, which I would have said frankly is everybody. If you've got your back turned, it doesn't matter whether or not you're partially sighted, you still won't hear an e-scooter approaching. I nearly got run down myself by one fairly recently as I stepped out of the way of somebody pushing a buggy the other way, and discovered the e-scooter was aiming for the same gap as me. Yes, what they're looking for is a sound that is identifiable but not intrusive, and they're saying it could improve the experience for some of the most vulnerable road users. Frankly, I think it would improve the experience for all of us. Now, the problem is that whilst DOT are amongst the companies that are running legalized trials of rental e-scooters on the roads, there are, of course, as we've just seen, 1.3 million of these scooters been purchased. So there's probably hundreds of thousands of them in use right at this moment, being ridden illegally up and down the UK on roads and pavements. And how are they going to get the sounds into those machines, because I think that is even more important in some ways than getting them into the legal trial versions. Right, okay, so Nigel's looked in. Good morning to you, Nigel. Good to see you. Don't forget, set a reminder, Elevenses goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. You will be able to catch it too on my YouTube channel, Survival Schools UK, on Catch Up. It is available on Catch Up on Facebook, but it's much easier to find it on YouTube, frankly. So do pop over there, Survival Skills UK. Don't forget the all-important UK, and find the shows that you've missed if you want to catch up on something. Now, if you have a recent model Indian sitting in the garage, I somehow doubt that it will be out on the road today, in the at least down here in the southeast of England where we have the snow. You should check to see if your machine is one of 7,800 2021 and 2022 motorcycles that Indian are recalling over a potential fuel pump issue. Now, the recall includes Scout and Chiefs motorcycles, which have been produced between February the 5th, 2021 and November the 4th, 2022. The update says that the fuel pump may fail during operation, and that, quote, the subsequent engine stall increases the risk of a crash. The suspect fuel pump has been manufactured apparently outside of the engineering specification, and whilst the supplier was apparently aware of the issue, this was not communicated to Indian at the time. Now, no fewer than 180 reports of fuel pump failures have been identified during the investigation into the issue, and that includes 26 reports of engine stalls. Now, thankfully for all the parties concerned, no crashes or injuries have reported as being related to this quality issue. Now, the recalled bikes will, of course, get a properly engineered replacement fuel pump, and Indian has also issued a stop sale order on potentially affected motorcycles pending the fitting of the updated pump. Now, dealers got the notification for this last month, November, and known owners of the model should have got the message on December the 2nd. So if you haven't received a notice from Indian and you are the owner, I would suggest you go and check to see if your bike is one of those affected, just in case for some reason you've been left off the list. Right, okay, Nigel's popped in as well. Good morning, Nigel. Good to see you here. Right, so where are we? We are moving on to the Suzuki news story, if I can get the picture up correctly. Right, let's click the right buttons, and what we should see in any moment now is a picture of Suzuki's new GSX 8S. There it is. Now, this is the brand new parallel twin motorcycle. You'll probably recall it was unveiled just over a month ago, and Suzuki has now announced pricing for the UK. The bike is due to arrive early next year, should hit showrooms, and the price that you can expect to pay is £7,999 recommended retail price. Now, that is actually around £500 cheaper than the initial Showtime speculation, and it makes the new model £1,000 more expensive than the SV650, which does remain in the lineup and is currently priced at £6,999. But the bad news is that it does make the Suzuki £1,000 more expensive than the very similar new Honda Hornet, which has already been priced at £6,999 for the base model, so same price as the older SV. So there's a problem for Suzuki, and frankly, I think the Suzuki really does struggle in the looks department too. Now, talking of looks, one of the nicer looking machines that was made is, in my opinion, the Moto Guzzi Stelvio. And this is it. Let me just get that up on screen. There we go. Now, Moto Guzzi have, during the show season, been teasing the return of the Stelvio. This is the original. The bike was in production for 8 years. It ran from 2007 to 2016. It is named after the Passo dello Stelvio, or the Stilfserjoch if you come from the Austrian side. It's one of the highest passes in Europe. It's certainly the highest paved mountain pass at 2,757 meters, which makes it a bit of a mecca for motorcycles. It's highest pass in the Eastern Alps, I think it is. Anyway, the original bike was built around the 105 horsepower 1151 cc V-twin. It had a reputation for being robust and reliable, and as I say, I did think it was actually a rather nice looking bike, and it would certainly have found a way into my garage, but for a couple of things. Well, the first thing is that the bike might have handled well, but light it wasn't. It was actually weighing in at 250 kilos or 550 pounds. And, you know, if you read the reviews, they all say, yeah, the weight vanishes on the move. But the fact is, you still have to push the bike around at a standstill, such as when you're getting it in and out of a garage. And, you know, the more weight, the trickier it gets. And of course, the weight also bites when you're riding at lower speed. Now, an experienced rider can work around it, but for less experienced riders, that can be a bit of a handful, particularly when the seat is moderately high. It was 820 millimeters. It was adjustable upwards, but that was 32 inches to start with. So the bike did suit physically bigger riders, but the combination of height and bulk did make it a bit of a handful for others. Turned out to be a bit too much of a problem for who bought one but didn't keep it long before he traded it off for something a bit on the lighter side. The Stelvio met the Euro 3 emission standards, but it competed, of course, head-on with bikes like the BMW GS series and the even more advanced, newer KTMs. And the Guzzi really was never the big seller that perhaps they hoped for. And it was never adapted to the newer, more demanding Euro 4 emission standard, let alone Euro 5, so it disappeared from the showroom. But at the Milan show last month, Moto Guzzi showed off a display of a Stelvio nameplate sitting above a set of wire spoke wheels. So the implication is that the Stelvio is likely to be making a comeback. And it wouldn't be a huge stretch of imagination to think that the machine will be based around the recently launched V1000 Mandello. And again, if I can just get the picture up on screen, I've got a photo, publicity photo of the Mandello sitting there on the road, possibly the very pass we've just been talking about. Now, that bike uses a brand new 115 horsepower 1042 cc V-twin, and it makes a fairly impressive 105 newton meters of torque. The S model gets semi-active suspension, and you also get on the Mandello at least one innovative use of electronics, and this is it. What you're looking at there is actually a pop-out wing at the front of the petrol tank. So rather than producing downforce at the kind of speeds that you'll only ever experience on the fastest racetracks, the Mandello actually has these which pop out to keep your knees dry in the rain. I'm not quite sure why, frankly. They apparently come out at 70 kilometers per hour, just under 45 in UK money, but at least one road tester didn't actually notice the difference. And of course, we still get wet under 45 miles an hour. So sadly, I'd say it's a gimmick that is likely to go wrong at some point rather than anything with a serious function. If they wanted to keep your knees dry, just make the fairing a bit bigger would be the obvious decision. And of course, the Roadster still weighs in at a fairly hefty 233 kilograms, which is 514 pounds. So, you know, despite the sort of stripped down look, the Roadster look, it's not a lightweight. Now, add on the extra kind of kit that the Stelvio will probably have to be fitted with to compete with the other adventure bikes, and you'll probably be ending up with a new adventure bike which weighs the same as the old Stelvio. Just on a personal note, something that you may or may not have noticed, the Stelvio, not Stelvio, the Mandello has a lookalike. This is it. Top bike's the Stelvio. The bottom bike is actually the TDM 850 from Yamaha, which is decades old now. I can't remember when that came out, 80s, I think 85 or something. And the TDM, of course, ironically, is a machine which used a parallel twin with offset crank pins to try to recreate a V-twin firing order. Now, the Mandello will be coming in at 13,500 for the base model. The S version will set you back another £2,250, and I really can't see the Stelvio arriving, if it does, for much less than 15k either. So nice bike, but probably not going to be a top seller, I fear. And Sue's looked in. Good morning, Sue. Nice to see you. Right, okay, don't forget, if you have missed any of my, well, I know what I'm doing here. I'm trying to put a banner up. There we go. If you want to grab all the latest posts from Facebook and the historical database as well, around 800 skills on Saturday and tips on Tuesday posts are up on my coffee page, and you can get a month's access for the price of a cuppa. It does take me quite a long time to research and produce these shows, so all support to keep you updated with the latest news is of course very welcome indeed, by just a cup of coffee over on my page there. Will help me keep preparing these stories for you. And the next one, in fact, is an interesting one because it's about Google Maps and Waze. Now, do you use Google Maps? Do you use Waze for navigation? Well, I tend to do a split. I tend to use Waze while I'm actually in the car and the phone is sat on the dash. But I tend to double check my route using Google Maps before I head out the door, because they don't always come up with the same answer. And as you'll see in a minute, that's a little bit surprising in some ways. Now, generally speaking, Waze, since it's updated by users itself, automatically the phone collects the data about your speed and your position and where you're going and all the rest of it, and then feeds that up to their number crunching engine, which then computes a route. So everybody contributes data, and they basically use it to help you find your way around holdups on the road. And generally speaking, I found that Waze does work pretty well. It won't stop me getting stuck in what had turned out to be a 3-hour jam actually on the M2. I was on the way back from doing biker down in Rochester. It diverted me off at the last available exit, and as I crossed the bridge just a little bit up the road, I was able to see round the corner and see the back of the tailback, which extended several miles up the road. So I was very pleased to be using Waze on that particular night, even though I knew the route. But I have noticed that Waze's radical routing that it used to deliver actually has been toned down a bit. Sometimes you do get routed onto main roads rather than the sort of back road cut-throughs. I suspect there's been some discussion behind the scenes about that. But it does also provide useful alerts like broken down vehicles, potholes, and whisper it to the police. Mind you, I did mention a few weeks back, you may recall, that one police force had actually been deliberately updating their patrol vehicle positions because what they had found was that the slowing down effect of the sort of the Waze alert going off was slowing drivers down for some hours after the vehicle had actually moved on. Anyway, Waze is now said to be working on a missing feature, and that is vehicle profiles. Now, that would give us the option to set different profiles for different vehicles. So, for example, you could easily set up different profiles for a car and a bike. You could even set up different profiles for commuting and what you would like to do on fun roads at the weekend. Now, there's no date at which this new quick switch option will appear, but the word is out in California that it is being trialed. Of course, you probably know that Waze is owned by Google. I have to be honest, I've never quite understood the logic of them owning both apps, but there we go. Hey ho. Now, technology, does it ever stop? Well, we've just seen pop out wings on a Moto Guzzi. If you have Yamaha, you can head over to the Google Play Store and you can download the Yamaha Motorcycle Connect app. Here's what Google actually has to say about it. Enhance your motorcycle life with greater convenience, peace of mind, and enjoyment through Y Connect. By connecting your smartphone with Y Connect installed and on your motorcycle, we provide greater motorcycling convenience and support your motorcycle through this application. In addition, this application provides a new level of enjoyment by connecting you with Yamaha users all over the world. So what is it? Well, essentially, it's the usual thing. It's a phone app. It's available for Android or iPhone. And once installed on the phone, it pairs with a Yamaha that is equipped with what's called a Communication Control Unit, or a CCU for short, and that allows an information exchange from the phone to the bike and vice versa, so the user can get a variety of useful information. For example, the full system would include fully interactive turn-by-turn satellite navigation, which comes from using Garmin's own Street Cross app, and that would be mirrored to the bike's display. Plus, you get handlebar controlled access to your phone and to music. A more basic system, which is will offer phone, text, and email notifications, but no navigation option, and it won't come with handlebar control functionality either. The only problem is that at the moment there are only 2 bikes which have this connectivity. The new 2023 X-Max scooter will get the full package, and a more basic system will be fitted to the 2023 model year MT-07. Now, presumably it will be rolled out to other bikes in due course. Perhaps what they're intending is to use the limited rollout to actually test whether the app works or not. I do have a Yamaha My Ride app, which is a very, very limited app, which just basically tracks your ride and gives you a little bit of data about it, but doesn't interact with the bike. Obviously, it's just a GPS app, and it's very limited functionality, and also it's a bit clunky and a bit inconsistent in use. So when you do get your data on the phone using this app, you can pull it the other way. So you get a revs dashboard screen on your phone, and that can display interesting stuff like engine RPM, throttle opening, acceleration, fuel consumption, and more. You can also generate your personal riding log to track your ride time info. You'll get like time, route, average speed, fuel consumed, average engine RPM, and an odometer record. Now, as I say, all useful stuff, I suppose, but the bit that I could really do without is worrying about what the phone is doing, ringing while I'm riding. As far as I'm concerned, when I'm riding, the phone is off for me. All right, okay, so I promised to come back to 2 in-depth stories. Nigel has just commented on, not so much does technology ever stop, but more does it ever work properly. Yes, well, that's certainly an issue, and that's possibly, as I just suggested, why they have a limited rollout there. And Paul's just turned up. Morning, Paul, just in time for me to look at one of the in-depth items that I was about to start. So now, this is, as I say, firmly in the About Time 2 category for news. And this is going back to the story that a DVSA strategy group may finally be undertaking a motorcycle license review sometime in the not too distant future. Now, again, I will emphasize that this is all sort of maybes and could be's. There is nothing set in stone here yet. Now, even before the current licensing system for motorcycles came into operation almost a decade ago, I was saying that the lack of incentive offered to the youngest riders by the pass a test, get a full license for a 125 only test for the 17 to 21-year-olds would result in those young and most vulnerable riders delaying taking the test itself, and therefore simply riding around on oil plates on a CBT only. And this means that they delay taking the training, which would get them to a test ready standard. Now, remember, the test standard is that of a reasonably competent road user. The implication is if you can't pass your test after CBT, then you simply are not riding at a reasonable and competent standard. So at the moment, the only way that a rider can get straight onto the bike test is unless they take that test at 17 and they pass and get a test for a pass certificate for a 125, where there's no incentive, of course, to move up. You have to be 21 plus to get access to a bigger machine. Now, the idea presumably was to delay access to big machines until riders were older and more responsible, and it was definitely a response to the lack of interest in the bike industry generally in enhancing rider safety. But the fact is, what it achieved was to put the youngest riders onto the road with an inadequate skill set. I've been saying for years that the current CBT regime, which has been barely updated since 1990, really isn't adequate preparation for riding on the UK's roads. It wasn't when I was a CBT instructor, and it isn't now. Now, under the prior regime, many of the youngest riders did actually take a test. Okay, they had to go to a training school, they had to complete CBT, they had to take their test on a 125, but it did give them access to a 33 horsepower restricted machine. And there were lots of 125 tests. All training schools kept a few 125s in their shed for not just to do CBTs, but also to go off and do these tests. And when I was working as a trainer, we did take 125s regularly to test. But as soon as the new rules came in, the numbers of riders actually going through the test process on a 125 plummeted. I think one school reported taking just 2 to test in an entire year. Now, data suggests that MAG have accumulated that the number of CBTs issued actually outnumbers the number of test passes. And that would clearly indicate that the younger riders are simply repeating CBTs and not gaining any new skills for their time and money. Now, as well as the expense to riders who are already cash strapped, that's all most certainly resulted in unnecessary casualties amongst the youngest riders. I don't think it was any coincidence at all that the steady decline in motorcycle casualties in this century actually stopped and even showed a slight uptick at the time those new licensing laws were introduced. Now, sadly, the public perception of CBT is that it is a one-day course and that basically anybody who doesn't make the grade will come back for more coaching. But any school that attempts to make a CBT a more in-depth training session, maybe over 2 days rather than one, will simply fail to sell those courses because everybody's looking for the cheapest possible CBT. And similarly, there have been attempts to persuade riders to sign up to post-CBT training, even subsidized courses for these learners, but the uptake has been low. So the news that the very recent Motorcycle Action Group report recommending a full review of the motorcycle licensing regime, that was something I was actually planning on reporting on today, but events have moved a bit quicker than I expected. The fact that it has actually this week received a favourable response is very, very welcome. Now, in their report, MAG claims that the licensing system is delaying the age at which riders pass a full test, resulting in a higher younger casualty rate, and I would concur. MAG's Director of Campaigns and Political Engagement, Colin Brown, he said the analysis shows that young riders account for 28% of all motorcycle casualties. The figure is 18% for young drivers. The comparison normalizes for the relative safety of the two modes, but clearly shows that young riders are more likely to suffer than young drivers. The connection to the proportion of unqualified young riders seems hard to refute. So basically what they're saying is if you take away the difference made by the driver sitting in a safety cage and the motorcyclist relying entirely on what they're wearing, there is still a discrepancy in the casualty rate between motorcyclists and car drivers, and they put this down to the fact that motorcyclists are riding around unaccompanied on L plates. Now, Colin collaborated with Dr. Jessica Anderson Hudson of the Lund University on this analysis, and the study found that for every 5 CBT certificates issued, just 1 full license is achieved. I'm actually surprised that the figure is as low as 5 to 1. My own personal suspicion is that if they did more research, that they would find a higher ratio of CBTs to licenses these days. Now, MAG say that they think that many new riders simply abandon riding in favour of less environmentally friendly cars. I don't think that's actually the crucial point. Attractive it is to make a political statement, of course. The obvious conclusion would be, from my point of view, that the youngest riders are, as I suggested a moment ago, not taking a test and are riding on repeat CBTs. Now, if they get mobile on a 125 at 17, they would have to repeat the CBT at 19 and then quite possibly again at 21 when they come to take a training course to get an A2 intermediate license. So that's 3 CBTs potentially. But the analysis also raises significant concerns about the lack of data on CBT riders. Colin commented, quote, "There is little evidence to fall back on with respect to CBT riders. We have no way of knowing how many riders are currently riding on L plates, nor how often they choose to renew their CBT. We are recommending more research is done in this area, but it is beyond the resources of MAG to fund it. I would like to see government funding being offered to allow this work to be done. This is absolutely crucial data collection, and the fact that the government don't have that data, that the DVSA aren't collecting it, and at least are not actually disseminating it, is incredible, quite frankly. Now, MAG also say that the study reveals that the peak age for attaining a motorcycle license is 24 in Great Britain, and they say that compares unfavorably with the equivalent peak age of 17 for car driving licenses. Now, I checked the data on that one, since I was actually under the impression that more and more people are putting off learning to drive until they're older. But the fact is that at least as of data from 2017, the latest I could find, the peak age for passing a car test is 17. Around 1/3 of a million drivers passed their test at age 17 in 2017. But the fact is that 500,000 passed their test between the ages of 18 and 20. So it's not quite as clear cut as that statement makes it seem. Now, it is worth saying that I've also been reminding everybody for a decade that the original EU directive, which was at the root of the stepped license system that we have here in the UK, always contained an option for member states to choose between testing or training to allow riders to make the jump from one full license category to the next category up the list. So a rider who had got a full license on a 125, there was the option for them to go back to a training course, and basically do something sort of akin, presumably, to a CBT with a licensed instructor, and be signed off just like a CBT is signed off, without an examiner ever looking at the candidate, to ride on the road. It was the DVSA and the DFT who chose to make each jump dependent on passing both the Module 1 and Module 2 tests, and the training option, abandoning that training option, it really helped to make the case for the DVSA's very significant investment in the multi-purpose test centres, which have been built up and down the country. And the DVSA quietly sidelined their promise to look further at the training option in the future. Now, statement from MAG via Colin Brown concluded, quote, "I don't claim to have all the answers on how to improve the current regime, but I do think this study reveals that there is a genuine and pressing need for change. We want better safety outcomes from the system. We also need to remove entry barriers to motorcycling. As a transport mode, it offers a real solution for reducing transport congestion and emissions. It's time to accentuate the benefits, not suppress them." Now, to be honest, this kind of argument for changing the motorcycle test rules has been presented to government many times, but as far as I know, this is the first time that evidence has been offered to support the claims about the problems surrounding the youngest riders. And to my surprise, the Roads Minister, Robert Holden MP, has confirmed to MAG that the motorcycle licensing review may come soon as a possible outcome from a newly forming DVSA motorcycle strategy group. The minister wrote, quote, "The issues you have raised are important to this department and the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency. This department is currently establishing a new motorcycle strategy group which will consider developments affecting road safety and the training and testing for riders in the motorcycle sector." And he went on to say that establishing the number of riders who rely on just compulsory basic training to ride should be useful to help inform future decisions, discussions and analysis. As far as the full review of the motorcycle licensing regime is concerned, this may be one of the outcomes of the newly forming strategy group. Please rest assured, MAG, along with other important key stakeholders, will be involved in any future work. Well, frankly, after years of having strategy changes pretty much dictated downwards, the offer to work with motorcycle groups rather than simply tell them what to do would make a very nice change. Now, whether or not we'll actually get anything out of this is anybody's guess at the moment. There will no doubt be some people who will say this is all coming about due to Brexit and the fact we no longer have to abide by EU rules, but at the risk of straying into politics, which is something I try to avoid doing on this show, I don't think there's any doubt that the UK licensing system will continue to align with that in Europe, simply so that you can drive your vehicle across the border without any issues. Right, okay, it's actually 22:12 already, so I think what I'm going to do is I will hold over the number 2 motorcycle crashes to filtering follies, because that will add another 7 or 8 minutes to the show by the time I work my way through that one. So I do very much hope that you have enjoyed the show. Apologies for not getting to the filtering follies, but that mag story came in first thing this morning into my news feed, and I really thought it actually needed to be covered in depth. So I do hope you found that interesting. I will keep an eye on what's going on there. I will continue to raise my own thoughts on this one, because I think it is important. I think motorcycling is being disproportionately targeted by the DVSA, and life being made more difficult for motorcyclists. And you know, at the end of the day, we can go back 20 odd years and look at the total lack of cooperation from the motorcycle industry when government was seriously trying to address motorcycle casualties. If you ask me, it's the motorcyclists who've done their best to kit up with good quality helmets and good quality riding kit over the years, which has probably done more to reduce casualties than anything that the industry ever did. Probably a very controversial view, probably upset a lot of people in the industry itself, MCIA and organisations like that, but it is good to see MAG pushing forward. I would also wonder where the Motorcycle Council, National Motorcycle Council, is on all this. All right, Sue says, pack show again, Kevin, thanks. Thank you very much to you and all who've looked in and who will look in the future to watch this particular show. Always interesting feedback. Kevin says, thanks for the show, looking forward to the filtering feature. Yeah, sorry you've missed that one. I will come back to that on the next show. And Paul says, true remarks about certain elements in the industry. Yeah, okay. Nigel says, interesting session, and he will have to owe me a coffee. He's away convalescing at the moment. Hernia, oh no, very much sorry to hear that. I sympathise, having had my very own hernia just a year and a half ago. So get well soon, Nigel. All the best. Right, thanks everybody indeed for looking in. As I say, back on Sunday with the next show. I'll keep you updated over what's going to happen over the Christmas period. I think the Christmas show might just be recorded. I think I might get into big trouble with my t'other half if I try and do a live one on Christmas Day, but hey ho, you never know your luck. So anyway, if you are out there on Britain's fairly freezing roads today, do make sure that you stay shiny side up.